Welcome to the Living Life Juicy podcast. This is where we explore how we can be present and kind as we do great things. I'm your host and guide, John Losi. If you're interested in like video resources and insights in how people learn and grow and how groups develop, I've got the Growing People podcast and YouTube channel where we have tons of videos and resources for you to download to use with your group and with your people. This is all part of the Into Wisdom group. You can check that out at intowisdomgroup.com, where you can learn about that. Be sure to like, comment, and do all that stuff you're supposed to do on podcasts. And be sure to share this if you want to share interesting people with the people that you are interested in. So today's guest is Renee Delgado. And I met Renee through our local community theater, the Conejo Players, through my wife. My wife was heavily involved there. Where Renee is also extremely involved in the community theater in our area. She's active on and off stage. As I got to know a little bit more about her, her involvement in the theater barely scratches the surface of who she is and what she does. She's currently a successful business leader in our area. She's part of Moorpark City Council, and she's an author. But I want her to be able to tell her story. So welcome, Renee. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah. Let's start off with just a quick question about how do you describe what you do? Because you do so many different things. So if you had to put it in a nutshell to describe you, what do you say?
In a nutshell to describe everything?
Yeah, try.
I will try. Doing my best to better the community and helping people realize their dreams. How about that?
Okay. All right. And so how does that play out currently?
All right. Well, currently, so I was recently elected to Moorpark City Council last December. And so I'm a pretty big part of the city and of my community, and I was to begin with. So it's one of the reasons why I decided to try going a little bit further and becoming even a greater part of the community. Then as far as helping people realize their dreams, I've been a real estate broker I've been a realtor for the last 12 years and a broker for the last 8. And I help people realize their home dreams.
Nice.
It's something I'm passionate about doing.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to hear a little bit about how you got here. And I'll phrase this like you're a superhero, which you are, but superheroes have origin stories. Sure. Tell us about Renee's origin story. Where did this come from? How did you get here?
All right. I've always been an entrepreneur. My mom said I remember this, but she helps me remember the stories of when I was in middle school, and I used to make those like lanyard bracelets and the yarn bracelets, and apparently I would sell them to my classmates, and I actually got suspended for selling stuff at school. My mom was upset that they would suspend a kid for doing that. I was a straight A student, and they suspended me for being an entrepreneur. So she was a little upset about that, but I did move my bracelet selling business to the local park that I lived across.
So you first of all.
Yes.
My rebellion was I got suspended in kindergarten, but not for such good purposes. I got in trouble, had to pick up trash on the playground, and me and the other guy ended up walking over to the park that was next door. So I got in trouble, but not for such wonderful reasons. So that seemed to expand. So what grade were you?
I think I was in 3rd grade.
Okay.
But by being suspended, I actually had more time to make more bracelets, so it worked. It worked out well.
You learned about inventory, and
I did. I learned about inventory. I learned about licensing, because when I tried to sell in the park, I got stopped there too, and they said you have to have a license to sell out in public. So started learning about bureaucracy early on of owning a business. But we can fast forward to college.
Yeah. Okay. Real quick before we fast forward, did you continue exploring different businesses while you were in junior high and high school?
Not so much. I did a lot more community service during junior high and high school than business. I was, you're a pet sitter and home sitter in my little townhouse community that I lived in, but that was about it. What most teens do.
Did you get involved in theater when you were in high school?
No, so it was the community theater was when I was an adult.
Okay.
Yeah, found discovered that later on.
Yeah. So where did you grow up? What was your community?
I was in Woodland Hills.
Woodland Hills. Okay.
Born in Santa
And
Monica, is in Woodland Hills.
okay. And so that puts you you were a local residential. You went to UCLA, correct?
I did go to UCLA. Yep, I have a bachelor's and master's from UCLA. Yep.
Okay. In what discipline?
So have a bachelor's in interpersonal communications, and then digital media and graphic design. And that's where I started. My first actual company was a graphic design studio that kind of sprung out to a website design, and then eventually to a print shop. I became and I learned how toxic the printing industry was while I was doing that. They use ether and all types of heavy metals in the inks and in the press washes. So I started one of the first environmentally friendly print shops, and that was before the whole green movement started. So so when that started about a year later, my business really picked up, and it was unique, and I was the printer for a lot of big companies.
That's nice. Yeah. And also the community environmental consciousness that played into a business boom.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually I was part of that during high school. I was in like I was in the environmental awareness group, and part of Sierra Club and all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So that really didn't like it was very beneficial for you in that, because there was a market niche that you could definitely fill that nobody else was doing.
That is correct. At that time I was pretty much the first in this half of the state.
Okay.
Yep.
So you started that business, and it looked like you kind of just expanded as needs arose. So graphic design turned into web design, turned into printing.
And then turned into pretty niche printing. I kind of scoured the globe for all different types of papers that were not from virgin forests. So I had like elephant poop paper, and I had recycled paper with seeds inside of them, so you can plant postcards after you receive them and have flowers or herb gardens. So we came up with some creative ways
So on a side thing, how did you was there a creative process for finding those unique, not only the unique papers, but very unique to have seeds in a postcard? Did that just happen spontaneously, or did you have an innovative process to go through that? Or
and I honestly, it was just a lot of research. And just researching paper companies and researching more global paper companies, because other countries were kind of much further ahead than we were in recycled products, especially when it comes to paper. So I was importing stuff from paper from India and Mexico, and
So what, you didn't start off with looking for paper made from poop?
No, I didn't.
You found a distributor who said, "Oh, look, elephant poop."
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. All right."
Okay, and then the same thing with the seeds.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. I'm really honestly, deep down in my heart, I want to be an Imagineer. But that name's taken, and also I don't necessarily want to work for a large corp. But I would love to come alongside and help people find those unique things.
Sure.
I could put together a Imagineering team that could come in outside. I can't call it Imagineering, so it's something else, but
sure.
But just for groups. And it's interesting because with your it was diligence. It was the fact that you were researching something that you're passionate about, where you discovered these things. Right. How can we accelerate the discovery of those things? That's what I'm hearing. So more on, printing, pretty successful. And then what?
Did that for about, 9 years, and started getting burnt out. Actually, I was not even 30 yet. I started the business when I was in my early 20s. and I was very burnt out, a lot of time on the computer, a lot of time sitting, my back hurt, my eyes hurt. And it just wasn't rewarding anymore, unfortunately. So I kind of just was thinking to myself one day, I wonder if you could sell a business. Because I was still pretty young to the business world. I didn't know if that was a thing or not. Within probably a day or two, one of my competitors came to me and said, "Hey, if you're ever thinking of selling your business, just let me know." So I thought, well, I can't put it get it more in my face than that. So I spoke to an attorney, and we figured it out, and sold my company.
Okay. So tell me a little bit. I'm always curious about transitions and how you manage it and some of the ways that transition went. Tell me a little bit more about, okay, you built and sold a business.
Yeah, it was actually a really, really difficult decision. I kind of make it, it sound like it wasn't, but that was my baby. I was my blood, sweat, and tears for, almost a decade. Getting through jumping through a lot of hoops because I was a young woman, it wasn't taken seriously at first, but then started making a name for myself. So it was hard to just let that go. And it was hard to let my clients who I've been with for 8-9 years to just tell them, hey, I'm going to be moving, just doing something different and moving along. So that was the hardest part, was leaving something that I built from the ground. And put so much passion and stuff into. But
what was the tipping point there? Because all these things, but there had to be something to say, all right, I'm going to let this go. Was there a tipping point? Was there a straw that broke the camel's back? What is it that helped you pull the trigger?
Honestly, I think it was the fact that I literally had that thought, like, I wonder if this is something that I can do, is like sell a company, and within a day, that opportunity presented itself. So it wasn't necessarily that I got fed up, or it was just a brief, a fleeting thought, like, hey, I wonder if in the future that can happen. And I'm kind of one of those people that if something's brought to you, or if you see an opportunity, or you can't ask for something and then have it come to you and then say no. So I kind of just took that as a sign, we'll say, to go ahead, and maybe that was the best decision, was to move along. But yeah, as I mentioned, I was getting physically burnt out. I was working really long hours, and I wasn't even 30 yet, and I was tired and stressed.
So it sounds like, I get it. You think about it, and then all of a sudden it shows up. You've got to give that some attention.
Exactly.
And it came up because you were tired and stressed and all that kind of stuff. And so you talk with your lawyer, you set up a deal, and it happens. Tell me about that first day right after you signed the papers and it was done. Can you remember kind of what it was like?
I do. It was actually a weird experience, because I had been talking to my dad a few months before, because it took about 8 months, 6 to 8 months to get everything negotiated and all of that. But we were talking about, possibly doing real estate and working together, and maybe flipping homes, stuff like that. So I was getting my real estate license, and literally, and then he fell ill. And on the day that I signed the contract and I signed my business over, he passed away.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I ended up taking about 6 months, just to clear my head and kind of restructure, because this whole plan that we had was no longer right. So I ended up just getting my real estate license, which I had, and taking some time to figure out marketing myself, how I was going to market myself. Luckily, I was a professional in that. So, just figuring out my brand and how I wanted to go about doing it. And then I just kind of started from there.
I got to tell you, man, that I'm working with a bunch of people who are in career transition right now. And the first thing that a lot of them go to is, all right, I got to start working right away.
Right.
And they don't even ask themselves what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you had some time to prep beforehand. And that 6 months is so important, just to deal with endings. There's a I don't know. Here, I'll show a book this time. And you got to make sure you show your book in a little bit. But there's a classic book called Transitions by a guy named William Bridges. And what he talks about is every transition begins with an ending, and every transition ends with a new beginning. And he calls this neutral zone, which is the time between there. I call it chaos, because it really, you've given up the past identity and you haven't started a new one. And it can be really stressful to be in there. And you need to allow yourself to be that. Yeah. And ending well is crucial. You put a period on the sentence so you can access that past experience. But being intentional, like having that 6 months, first of all, to grieve and heal.
Of course. Yeah.
Not just for your dad, but for your business.
100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was hard to let go. I had a lot of guilt for my, my clients. They were going to be working with someone new, and, you build these relationships. So yeah, there was a lot of guilt with the sale of the company. And then of course I just had the loss of my dad too, of course. Yeah. So it was, two things at once, but I got the time I needed. And
tell me a little bit about how you did that, because I think a lot of people that are listening to this, oftentimes they come for those transition moments. How did you handle that? What did you do?
I mean, luckily because I did sell the company, I had some cash flow that I didn't have to start working right away. So I was luckily able to take some of that time. And it was really just figuring out, exactly how I wanted to get started. And just looking within myself and what type of I guess realtor I wanted to be now.
Well, you know what? I love that question, because it isn't, I want to be a realtor. You're asking specifically, what kind of realtor do I want to be? Not only what specialty or anything like that, but also I think that question, say ethically, service wise, identity wise, because a lot of people know what they want to do, but they don't know who they want to be in that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that you need to ask yourself and look within. But during that time, I had a few people ask me if I would help them start up their businesses, or ask me for advice. So during that time, during that 6 months as well, that's when I started writing my book. It did end up taking a couple of years to finish, because life happens and you can no longer sit down for hours at a time to really focus. But it's kind of what gave me the momentum to start writing the book. And it's a workbook. It's a step-by-step workbook on how to start a business from scratch. And it's more because I was just being asked, a fair amount. And I thought, well, it might just be easier to give people a book that they can actually go through and work on, than to have them, to work with people individually. So that's how the book started.
Yeah. Well, do you have it there to show up? And
I do. It is. Oh, it's green. So the green screen. Yes. Oh no, it's called Mastering the Start. But yep, hard to see. But
well, let me do something here, and it is available on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
So I'll share the screen right now.
It's called,
and this is what it looks like. Mastering the Start step-by-step workbook, and I love the idea of workbooks.
Yep, exactly.
Are you seeing the right screen? Am I sharing the right screen?
That is right. And it is an actual workbook. Like you can write in it. And it's geared towards, people who are starting their first businesses, or people who are maybe in like a college course, something like that. But it also has my own personal stories in there. Little tidbits of, things that happened to me that I'm hoping save time for other people to not have to go through.
So mine is the pottery panda is not necessarily, it's about a raccoon who starts a pottery business, but it's more about strategic planning. And I have a section in the introduction saying, this is not a business planning book. It's not, creating a business plan like what you really need to do as part of a startup. This is about creating a strategic plan. And so, yes, it's about a startup, but really it's about a company or an individual who wants to really be strategic about how they put it out there and then live it.
Sure.
And mine has thinly veiled stories of me and my friends if I were the raccoon.
There you go. Well, it always helps to have personal stories. I think it makes it, I don't know.
Well, that was the best thing, because I've done workbook type stuff before. This isn't a workbook, but at the end of every chapter, there's a QR code that takes you to workbook pages.
Okay, that's smart.
But it was, so I put it out there, and the first feedback that I got by two different people, one who is a pastor who is also a writer, the other one was a very seasoned business person who's on the board of everything you can imagine. They both kind of said the same thing, which is, I stopped caring about the main character because you weren't telling the story anymore. You were just showing the process. The other person said, that's not realistic. It's not that easy to come up with and implement a plan. You run into problems all the time. And that really helped me flesh out, what do I know? Like, there's one thing where he has natural grass, like he dries out the grass, and that's his packing for the ceramics. And at one point it wasn't stored properly when he's trying to start up. So a bunch of it is moldy. So he has to go back and delay and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
What were some of the interesting things as you were writing your book over a couple of years? What was kind of that process like? Tell me a little bit about how it got from, hey, I can help people by just giving them stuff, to let me publish this.
I mean, I guess I always wanted to, once I decided I was going to write a book, I wanted to publish it to make sure that it was available. So I don't know that there was much of a process to that. It was kind of just like, I want to make sure that, people can have this. It's not a money thing. I never intended on, I mean, great if I make some, but it was more to just, try to help people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really, like, people ask, I've helped some people. Okay. So I wrote 2 books for another publisher. And the second book, they gave me 0 support. Like, the reason why you only get a couple of, I was getting under $1 per copy, depending on how it was sold. Amazon, maybe a cent, but then they didn't do all the stuff that you go to a publisher for, which is promotion, handling with the distributors, all that kind of stuff. They didn't do any of that for my book. I got 0 like speaking gigs, which I did for my first one. And so I was like, this isn't good. Then the publishing house got sold to another company, and they took 2 different contracts on 2 different books, one of which they helped me out, and I had paid back the advance and was getting royalties. They combined it with the brand new book. And so I was still trying to pay off the advance, and they took all the sales from both books and didn't pay off the advance very rapidly. And they combined those. I haven't pursued it, but that made me say, I'm going to start my own publishing.
Yeah. I'm
not going to self-publish. So, but I know there's lots of people like me who are consultants and need what they call back table books. And it's that catch-22. Unless you're a known and published speaker or consultant, it's hard to get a book deal. And and it's a catch-22. You can't get that experience without having a book.
Of course. Yeah.
So I started this boutique publishing thing for my friends who were consultants and other things. And it turned into some really, I was going to do it myself. It took me over 10 years to do a book for myself, because I would be on the side doing things for other consultants, or helping. Like, I did a really interesting thing where a church wanted to do a Bible study, but they had a whole bunch of people who wanted to. So they got together, wrote a Bible study, had somebody in the church edit it, and we published it just for that church, really small. And now there's this group of people that are published authors. There's an editor that's a published editor. And it was just a fun little project that wouldn't be able to happen through any real publishing company.
Right. Yeah, no, I think most people now will self-publish, which is what I did as well. But yeah, I had to start a publishing company in order to do it, so that I kept the rights to the book.
Yep. Right. And it's like when they can point to a third-party publisher, there's a certain amount of credibility comes when you can say that it isn't self-published.
Right. Sure.
And that's why, man, I'd rather talk you through how to publish it yourself, because there's a lot of advantage to that. But if you don't want to know the publishing industry, then don't deal with it if you want to deal with it.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So we've got you started writing your book when you,
Yep.
in that 6 months, and then in the realty stuff.
Yep.
Now, where are you at? Tell me about how that, like that startup, did you use your own workbook? And
I did.
yeah. And then now I know you've, you can talk about your realty business and that. And I also know that you started to, I was amazed at how many different things in the community you're involved with even before. Was that always part of the approach or the strategy or just who you are, or is that something once you got it going, you reached out to?
I think it's more of once it started happening. I always loved uh, volunteering. I volunteered for the Jewish Home for the Aging for years when I was in junior high and high school, and was volunteering for Meals on Wheels and stuff like that. But I think when gosh, has it been? I think it's been 10 years when I discovered community theater. That's when I started getting on boards, the boards of things. And with my business, when I was networking, I would be, presidents of, different chapters or groups. So I kind of started in taking leadership roles that way. And while I'm no longer on the board of any theaters, I am on the board of, Chamber of Commerce at the city. So I'm pretty heavily involved.
Yeah. And how do you, because there's a lot of people who just have barely enough energy to do their job.
Sure.
Tell me about how you create that or find that energy. And also, do you think that having such broad types of things, does that take away from your thing, or does it add to who you are and to your energy?
I think it adds. I mean, obviously, the more time you spend not doing your career and what I obviously it takes away. But I love meeting new people. I love helping people. I love helping the new businesses that come to the city and try to promote them and advertise them. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all rewarding, and I think just by meeting people, it's also a type of networking, right? So I think it comes full circle, and it ends up helping, even though your business, even though that's not the original first intention.
So if you were to give a pitch to somebody who is, I would say, surviving rather than thriving in their business, they're going, I've got to get out there, or man, I really should volunteer, but I should be part of a networking. How would you convince somebody that it would be worth their time, energy, resource investment to go that direction?
I mean, I think it depends on the groups you end up going into, because there's a lot of people like when I first started my company, my graphic design company, I was in my early 20s. I joined the Woodland Hills Chamber of Commerce, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. I didn't like it at all. I ended up finding a different networking group that was actually mostly women, and that was really what got me going. And I loved being a part of it. So I think you have to kind of find your people, as they say, find the groups that you actually like and enjoy going to, and that should give you a little incentive. And as you become more and more a part of it, your name gets out there. People start using you and referring you. So it's a snowball effect. It's not an instant thing. It takes months. It takes months to build relationships. So, I would never tell anyone to go into a first meeting expecting immediate results. That's not the way business works.
Right. Yeah. Especially if it's relationship.
Exactly. If it's a service.
That's like my biggest thing. I've gone to a few different networking things, including your stuff, and enjoy it mostly, but I've been to a few where I step in brand new and I'm already being pitched. And there's like zero from that networking group.
Yep.
There's zero attempt to build a relationship with me.
Right.
They're assuming that I'm on the same relationship level as everybody else in the room. And now all of a sudden I'm like new meat.
Right.
And my business doesn't fit really well with a lot of those.
Yeah,
but,
which is not the way to go about it.
Yeah. So, all right. Now, tell me about, so one of the things I've known is realtors know everybody. and are
Yes.
involved just for the sake of their business, are involved in a lot of different things. I think that there's not many people who come close to your level of involvement in diverse interests in the community. But so you're doing this, your real estate stuff's starting to move. You're starting to get involved in the networking and the theater and other groups.
Mhm.
Tell me what prompted you. Why in the heck would you go into politics?
Yeah, that's, everybody who knows me asks me that. Like, you would be the last person I thought would be going into politics, because I'm a pretty neutral person. But actually, what I love most about city politics is that it's pretty darn neutral. It really is. It's supposed to be a completely nonpartisan position. At the end of the day, everybody has their opinions, right, and their beliefs, but it's really just to do what's best for the city. And the people within the city, which, what it's supposed to be as you get higher and higher as well, but it becomes less and less as people are getting influenced by outsiders. But I was involved with the city already, and the way cities are, most of them are split up into what's called districts now, where you have a representative from each district. The city is segmented, and a lot of it's based on socioeconomic parts of the city. So the district that I live in, there was a person who was going to run again, who'd been on for quite a while, and thought maybe to have someone fresh and new and who was more a part of the actual day-to-day of the city would be a better representative for myself and my neighbors. And so, people said, you should run. Why not? You're already a part, you already go to all the ribbon cuttings and you go to all of the, a lot of the city events. So why not just take
Make it official.
Yeah. So I did. I ran, and I knocked on 3,200 doors twice in the few months that I was running, so that I could meet everybody. It's hard when you don't know you can't put a face to the name on that piece of paper on that ballot. You don't know who you're voting for. So
I'm curious, what did you learn through the running process? And what have you learned since? Because it's been how many months that you've been on the council?
It's been 10.
Okay.
10
So
months.
my guess is it's about maybe not equal. You probably spent less time running than 10 months,
Yes.
but pretty close. What have you learned from your experience now?
I've learned that even though it's a nonpartisan position, people want to know where you stand, and it was very important to people. But I learned that there's a lot of people who complain about a lot of issues and don't do anything about it. And if you actually come and speak what's on your mind, we listen. And I wish more people would. I wish more people would be a bigger part of their community, and rather just sit at the sidelines. Because I realized, myself included, I sat at the sidelines. I didn't speak up. So it was a definite mental shift of okay, I see it from the other side now. And also a shift of, I see why things take so long to do, why projects, people complain, oh, it's been 20 years since, that project. There's reasons. And I mean, it's it doesn't always make sense, but it's not just that people want to sit idly by for 20 years and not make things happen. But
that's right. There's a difference between politics and governing.
Yeah.
And there's two different realities, but it sounds like you gained an appreciation for the complainers that show up.
Oh, 100%, of course.
Yeah.
And also by running, I spoke to so many different people of all walks of life. I was so grateful to meet like thousands of people, and hear their stories and hear what they're most concerned about, and hear, what we could be doing better or what they wish they saw. And also, to open up people's minds to explain to them how things work, which, I myself didn't know until I started this process. So I think I've been able to also broaden people's, mindsets as well, when it comes to being frustrated with city stuff.
Yeah. Now, do you think this is true not just in Moorpark, but in most city situations and city government? Do you think that, like, it sounds like, people need to let you know what's going on and what are the pain points? And if they don't, if they're thinking to themselves, I'll just be a complainer, I don't want to be that. But those are probably the people who are saying that to themselves are the ones that you want to hear from. Is it? Do you think that?
Yeah. Absolutely, and there are definitely times when we've all the five of us have gone into a meeting maybe thinking one way, and have had our minds changed by people who actually show up and talk and say what's on their minds and why they don't think we should do certain things. And we can't think of everything. We can't think of every single scenario. So sometimes it takes an outsider,
Right.
someone from the public to come and say, listen, you're not looking at the big picture. Here's another reason why you should or shouldn't do X.
Yeah.
So we listen.
Yeah. So I mean, my dozens and dozens of followers from all over the world. Why should they get involved in local city governance? And I'm not saying running for offices and stuff like that, but showing up to meetings.
Yeah.
Why should they?
So what's going on. I mean, honestly, so that you have a clue, and so that also to not spread misinformation. Like there's so much hearsay, and we have to correct stuff all the time, because no one actually comes to, or listen. The meetings are boring. I'll be 100% honest. It's hard to sit through a 2 or 3 hour meeting watching it on Zoom. But I would say look and see what's being spoken about that week, because if there's something there, if there's a restaurant coming that you live right behind, maybe you don't want that specific type of restaurant. Maybe you think it's inevitable, no one's going to listen to us. But hey, if you show up and say why you think you wouldn't want a specific type of business, or will listen. Your council will listen.
Yeah. And I don't know if this, from my perspective, most of the things that are written, whether in the papers or on social media, whatever, about what happened at a meeting are accurate, but not truthful. You know what I mean?
They're snippet.
Right, exactly. It's not in context and saying, hey, they said this and they did, but there's a much bigger story.
Picture,
and they're picking out what they want to, they're picking out the story they want to promote, not what's actually happening.
Yeah. I've definitely had people call me and go, did you say this? I'm like, yeah, but that makes the way it was written takes it all out of context.
Right. And that's what I mean. Yeah. I'm a believer that reality is much more complex than what you can get in a social media post or even an article from a newspaper or magazine. It's much more complex than that. And you got to dive into the subtleties. I think if you don't want to get an ulcer, and if you want to be effective in your own life. So last question before we go into a lightning round, but I would love to learn, what did you learn in the different areas through the COVID, through the shutdown? What were maybe 2 or 3 of your big lessons?
Let's see, probably the biggest lesson is how important community is. I think so many people felt so alone and isolated, obviously. But just I have a great little cul-de-sac that we live in, and we all know each other well. And I think if nothing else, it gave us an opportunity to really meet our neighbors and know them even better. We would all just sit outside on our lawns, talking. So I don't know. I think it gave people an opportunity to actually get to know each other better and spend more time with each other, maybe not face to face, but whether it's Zoom or just standing outside on your front porch. Yeah, I actually, I think it brought people together more than it's separated, or at least I hope it did.
Yeah. Did you find uh, connecting through digital means like Zoom or whatever, um, did anything surprise you about that process?
I think what surprised me was how it stuck afterwards, how it stuck around afterwards. Um, is it convenient to be in your bottom half pajamas and slippers and not have to get up and shower and makeup and drive half hour to a meeting? Yeah, yeah, it is. Most of my meetings that have stayed on Zoom, do I miss that one-on-one personal connection? Absolutely. So I don't know necessarily that I love Zoom still, but it was great. It was a great means to an end at the time.
Yeah. And it becomes like I'll use the improv term. It's a yes and type of thing.
Right.
We're limited. And I think the biggest shame is when people ignored the benefits that they found in being virtual and hybrid. And they just said, we'll toss everything that we learned over the past couple of years and go back and not necessarily take the competitive advantage of being able to sometimes, stay in your pajamas
Sure.
and other times be in person and not explore what's the best timing for that.
Sure.
Yeah. So this last little bit, I do a lightning round, which means that it's your first response and you're not signing a contract that this is your response forever.
Okay.
And you have the right to change your mind. But just what first comes to mind when you do this? The first question is, what, besides your own, what is your favorite book or media to give to people or to refer to people? What do you like to reference?
While it's an older book, I love Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I know it's a fan favorite. I think it really breaks down how people work and how not even just millionaires, but how extremely successful people think and why they do the things they do, and the strategies that they use. So I like putting that book into practice.
Now, I believe that's the book that the term mastermind comes from.
I believe so. Yep.
Mastermind groups and stuff. I think that's drifted a bit. So anything can be a mastermind, but still, there's your origin story for mastermind. Next one. And I've adapted this question because so many of my favorite people can't answer it the way it's phrased. So what I'll ask is basically I want to get to who are your heroes. But I also realize that a lot of people don't have a single hero. Yeah. But so I'll say, if you were going to assemble your superhero, what parts of different people would you take and why? So you get to create your own hero.
Yeah, you're right. I don't have a specific person that I've necessarily looked up to or strived to be. I think I would, all the people who were so passionate and dedicated to whatever it is that they did, like we'll say Bill Gates, by the time he was like 15 or 16, had programmed, had spent like 10,000 hours programming computers. He was already a master by the time he was in his late teens. So the people who really, Michael Jordan, people think it's luck. A lot of people think, oh, you're just born with the natural talent. And yeah, you have to have some talent, but it's the people who actually take the time to not go to parties and get drunk. Instead, they go, shoot free throws. Yeah, it's the people who take the time to do what it is that they're passionate about doing and become the best at it. Yeah. All of those people.
I get that.
Team.
And that's where, like the thing about the 10,000 hours to mastery. What Gladwell doesn't cite is in that study that he refers to is it's not any kind of practice. It's guided and focused practice. And that's the type of practice where there's coaching, where there's feedback, where there's multiple attempts, where there's tons of failure. So that 10,000 hours isn't just Jordan going out and shooting free throws on his own. He was also doing it in the context of being coached. Right. And with Gates, he surpassed his the teachers at his high school. So he got time in the basement of the first business to have one of the big computers.
Right.
And so he was working with the professionals in the area, learning how to program and code with the cards.
Yeah.
But it's not, people go out and just go, oh, all I need is 10,000 hours. This is why the world's best athletes, the world's biggest business leaders all have coaches and other people that they go to get honest and accurate feedback.
Sure.
Yeah.
And anybody who just says, oh, I just need 10,000 hours, I don't think people understand how much 10,000 hours is. That's
Right.
years. It's years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there's somebody out there doing the math, but
yeah.
So last one, and this is, you can have fun with, or it could be somebody, you know, really serious, but who do you find yourself quoting most often? It could be an author, it could be a movie. My brother came in with Clint Eastwood in Ala Josie Wales. Somebody else was pulling out from, in fact, the others, you know, deep stuff from the books that they read. But for you, if let's say your husband was going to answer this question, who do you quote most often?
Oh gosh, I think he'd struggle with this one because I don't quote people that often, actually.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm not a good person to answer that question.
Yeah. You can't recite whole movies back.
I cannot. No, I do not memorize whole movies back.
Yeah.
No.
But you do memorize scripts.
I can memorize some scripts. Yes, exactly.
Tell me this. Perhaps it's a favorite line you've ever been able to deliver on stage.
Oh my gosh. No, now you're asking me to like go back.
I'm sorry.
7 years of favorite lines that you're gonna have to just
anything that comes to mind. What's the first that comes to mind?
Man. Honestly, I can't think of anything. It's gonna be another like 10 minutes.
Okay. So what do you think that the fact that you can't recall whole movies and all that kind of stuff, what do you think it says about the way that you think?
What are these questions? Oh my gosh, these are hard to answer.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you like my take on it. My interpretation is that you need to run things through your head to give it your thought. It's not like you want to just you don't express your thoughts through others' words. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. I don't.
Because I like Fletch is a shortcut for me because it was written by somebody else, but it like helps me express something.
Okay.
And that's what I think a lot of people quote. And I'll go to a quote that means something to me, which was in college. I read a book called Reaching Out. And the author basically says, you know, you can quote people and some people say this and some people say that and some people say this, but ultimately it's going to come back to, but what do you say? And ultimately that's one of the things, like I love quoting and I love quotes, but ultimately it's going to come back to where you've reached already, which is, and this is what I say.
Sure.
So,
yep. I mean, I was just thinking of a quote that I like.
Tell me.
But I never actually recite it.
All right.
I'm trying to, I couldn't tell you who
word perfect or
it's people won't remember what you say, they won't remember what you do, but they'll remember how you make them feel. Right. So I try to keep that in my mind always too.
Oftentimes that one's attributed to Maya Angelou.
Okay.
But other people have said it too. So yeah, always good. Now that's side note, we named our dog Maya Angelou.
Did you?
Yeah, because dogs need to be named after authors. So we have Maya Angelou and Emily Dickinson.
Okay.
Cats need to be named after children's book or cartoon characters.
Okay.
So our last batch of cats named Fred, Velma, and Daphne. So
okay.
Well, Renee, thank you for spending this time and carving it out. I really love hearing your story and how you got there. And I appreciate our connection. And you've been kind enough to invite me to different things. So thank you very much. And thank you for the time.
Of course. Thank you, John. It was great. Thank you.